Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zolda, your host, CEO of P3 Tech Consulting, and now publisher at Autonomy Global. Great to have you. We are rounding out this month that we've dedicated to a very important theme of security, sponsored overall by Ecodyne. So Ecodyne, we really appreciate them. And we have a great friend to the show on today. D-Fend Solutions has been with us for the last several years. We've been watching their technology evolve. We've been watching drone threats evolve. And today we're going to have Gordon Kesting on the show. So great to have you, Gordon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Don. Nice to be here. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, I think we've had, I lost count of all of the different people from D-Fend we've had on the show over the years. But for everybody out there, we are going to drop all of those links in the YouTube description. So go back and check that if you want to watch any of those other shows, as well as a whole slew of articles based on RF cyber takeover technologies, which we're going to talk about here today. So let's just go ahead and get to it. Gordon, before we dive into the technology, why don't we talk a little bit about you? For those that don't know you, can you give us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Defense Solutions, our North America operation in particular. Been with the company now for just over a year, but I've had a career in the national defense and homeland security industry, starting off designing radars and cockpits for fighter aircraft. Also done flight controls for both military and commercial aircraft, and a lot of C4I applications for both defense and border security. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow, and you just kind of skipped over the fact that you have, I think, a couple of engineering degrees that enabled all of that. And what an amazing career. And now here you are in the commercial sector, doing really important things, not only for homeland security, but for defense, for actually the commercial sector as well, because the drone threat is everywhere. So let's talk a little bit about the company, D-Fend Solutions. Many people that are listening probably know about this company, but can you tell us a little bit about why D-Fend's solution and approach to counter US technology is unique?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be getting into this over the course of the discussion, but basically, Defense Solutions, we're the leading provider of what's called RF cyber techniques as they're applied to the counter drone, counter UAS uh, issue. And basically, we are enabling full control, safe control, and takeover and continuity of operations of the drones as we detect, track, and identify them. And then we use various techniques to mitigate them as well, including safe takeover, where we're then flying them to a safe designated spot that we've already predetermined, or sending it back to the operator. As a company, we're deployed in right around 30 countries and growing, and we address a number of different verticals, as you already mentioned. We're not just in the military space, but also homeland security, a number of different domains there on the border and other places, and then also airports, as well as public safety, law enforcement, and critical infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean the applications and the needs are very widespread, and you guys have enabled airspace awareness and protection in a lot of different places all around the world. So, before we get into some of the technology a little deeper, let's talk about some of the hottest topics going on in the news. Like in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of different things. President Trump and his administration issued a couple of executive orders about drones and airspace security. For one, there was another that was more focused on, I'd say, kind of unleashing, American drone dominance in terms of, having our own robust drone industry and um, the supply chain, I think, is kind of the point there, right? But let's talk
Mhm.
about the one that focused on the airspace and kind of taking that back, I think, was some of the words in that order. Given your background in counter UAS and sensitive environments, what part of the executive order really stood out to you?
Yeah, well, it's only been a couple of days since it's been released. Came out last Friday afternoon. We're now talking on a Monday. But some of the key points that stand out for us are, first of all, it's interesting that the president and his administration are taking this kind of notice of drones, uh, both UAS as well as the drone threat, and the threat they pose in particular to mass gathering events and a whole wide range of environments, as described in the executive order. They specifically call out things like the upcoming World Cup as well as the Olympics. So they're focused on that, as well as not just those big events, but the everyday situations. Secondly, there's a mention of grants going to state and local, tribal and territory agencies for both the purchase of UAS as well as counter UAS technologies to do detection, tracking, identification of drones. And then there's also, you'll be much more up on this topic, but there's also reference to the August 2020 laws on or advisories on the applications of federal laws to detection, tracking, and mitigation of drones. So I think they're looking at uh, things have evolved so quickly in both the drone and the counter drone space that the laws need a little bit of updating, and I think that's being recognized through this executive order. And then finally, there's a little bit of clear guidance being given to operators and owners of critical infrastructure, recognizing that they are also dealing with both the beneficial use of drones as well as the threats that they can potentially pose, and so that is also addressed in the EO. So it's fairly wide ranging. We're still digesting it, but I'm sure there's a lot more to be coming out of it based on what was published last Friday.
Yeah, I hope so, because these are words on paper and they're directive in nature, right? So that means people have to take action. And we did see the Biden administration put out the first ever counter UAS strategy. Nobody really talked much about it, but they did. And this one says we're going to do this, this, and this, and I really hope that is the case. I've been advocating for a long time. You may know, Gordon, for state, local, tribal, territorial authorities, for more robust authorities for the feds that have them today, and things like this. So it'll be really interesting to see, if, when, how all of this rolls out, but certainly a great step in the right direction, having that kind of highest level guidance, like, this is my intent, this is what I want to see happen. And now, it's up to the various agencies to make it happen, and Congress, quite frankly, possibly to roll in behind, give some no kidding authorities, because this EO doesn't do that. I don't know that people recognize that. That doesn't actually bestow authority, because I don't believe the president can actually do that uh, in this instance. But more to follow. Really interesting. But real world stuff is happening on a daily basis, and so the need for this is key. So in addition to these executive orders, right, we've seen Operation Spider's Web. Right, I love these names. This took place in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on this. And first of all, what even was it? And what are your key takeaways from that operation?
Yeah, well, we're still analyzing. This occurred, I believe, beginning of the month, June 1st, where Ukraine was able to drive a number of vehicles that were covertly equipped with small UASs, which were then remotely deployed to inflict some pretty significant damage at Russian airfields and aircraft. So we're still analyzing, as I said, the details. But some of the top level, high level takeaways that we see right now are, first of all, we continue to see kind of the strategic significance of using Group 1, Group 2, these small UASs particularly in a creative and innovative way as
Yeah.
they were deployed here. Secondly, it just points to the ongoing need for effective countermeasures against these small platforms and what they can do. Particularly, they're flying at low altitudes and can do things as we witnessed both in an ISR mission as well as attack missions, which were demonstrated in this incident. As we understand it, many of them were still remotely or radio controlled, RF controlled. So there's a place for kind of RF cyber technologies and some of the things that D-Fend is working on to possibly be included in solutions to counter these kind of things, as well as these were all flown in a swarm formation as well, and there's a place for RF cyber technology in that. And then just in general, it continues to show the need to secure high value assets like military bases and civilian settings and a whole number of other environments that are susceptible to the kind of things we saw.
Yeah, Gordon, it doesn't take a great leap of the imagination to realize that what can happen over there can happen over here. And, this executive order, the previous strategy, I think there's this recognition of this. And, moving forward, finally, we hope on giving everyone that needs the authorities and not just SLTT, right? Like critical infrastructure owners. I think you probably know the statistic, I believe, is like 80% or more of critical infrastructure in the United States is privately owned.
Mhm.
So, you can't expect the local police to show up if a drone is zipping, at your, I don't know, electric substation at like 100 miles an hour. So, more to follow there. But, this Operation Spider's Web, some of the things we're seeing everywhere else around the world, these all kind of lay the groundwork, I think, Gordon, for the core problem that D-Fend Solutions is solving. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, we remain focused on the rapidly evolving UAS landscape that's changing daily, as we even talked about before this show.
Yeah.
Some of the things we learned over just the last day that came out. Um, but our sweet spot is we're particularly focused on the smaller Group 1, Group 2, some Group 3 drones. Um, as they are transforming the this landscape, and particularly the drones, the widely used commercial drones, as well as the DIY drones, the do-it-yourself drones that are quite easily built up from you know places you can buy online and put together some pretty creative solutions. So, in addition to the beneficial use that drones have, which we certainly acknowledge and want to see happen, we're also cognizant of the threats that they can potentially pose, ranging from surveillance and espionage to being weaponized for attacks and attack missions, as we saw. So we're continuing to be focused on providing intelligent and adaptable solutions, doing this in a cost-effective manner, as is required to deal with this whole air domain awareness, and that's the general kind of mission. But as it applies to drones flying in the airspace in a safe and looking out for those that are doing it in an unsafe manner and with ill intent. So in that regard, we're building off of RF cyber as our kind of stock and trade or sweet spot, but we are also looking at how we progressively add layers on our own or become part of layered solutions, which we'll be discussing more as we go forward here.
Yeah. As drones evolve, I think a lot of myths have arisen. One of them, oh, with dark drones. Let's take dark drones as an example, Gordon. The fact that they may not emit RF, may not. That's an underline of that word. Uh, Actually, a friend of yours and mine, Tom Adams, wrote an op-ed recently for Autonomy Global, something along the lines of the rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. And he discusses how RF solutions are critical and will remain critical in any kind of defense in depth or layered solution. I think that's what you're alluding to. Not only layering your own technologies, but also then integrating with others. So let's get into that a little bit. I think it's a great segue to talk about how RF cyber counter UAS systems are an ideal starting point for building that multi-layered drone defense, especially in sensitive environments, whether it's military or civilian. Tell me a little bit about that.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yeah, first of all, I mean, one of my observations, like I said, I've been now in this business, um, steeped in it for a little over a year. But as I go around, one of the most often heard sayings is that there's no silver bullet for this counter UAS mission. So
Right.
there's a general acknowledgement across the whole community that in order to address the entire spectrum of threats and missions and everything that are posed here, that there's going to be a need for many different technologies to be integrated into what we can call this multi-layer approach. So this allows for a lot of different technologies and solutions to come together to really provide um, the most effective and robust way of dealing with counter UAS as a mission. So, as you said, we feel that RF cyber is a foundational layer as you start building these multi-layered systems, and we'll get into more details of that as we discuss here. But primarily, some of the things that RF cyber does for you, first of all, it provides both a sensing element to do the detection, tracking, identification, as well as a mitigation element to control the drone and mitigate it or defeat it. So right away, you are dealing with both ends of the drone life cycle, if you will, from all the way from detection through to mitigation. So, and you can get that out of an RF cyber system, and so it represents a very cost-effective approach to beginning a multi-layered or putting together a multi-layered solution. So there's several other good reasons why this is the case. The other is just we have much more dominant coverage. Most of the drones that people are seeing in a lot of settings are of the commercial variety as well as DIYs, and so cyber RF technologies are able to handle those because of our library-based application, and we're continually updating those libraries. But most of the things that the drones people are going to be seeing in all of the environments I talked about earlier, whether it's military, homeland, critical infrastructure, law enforcement, are going to come out of that commercial and DIY space. So you're addressing a very high percentage of what you're going to be seeing right out of the box, which is another good reason to start off with an RF cyber. Also, we do passive detection. So you're doing this in a way that provides covertness, enhances survivability in a military environment when we're passively detecting. And when we are mitigating, we're doing this in a very low power manner. We're not employing high power barrage jamming techniques. So the mitigation itself has advantages from that standpoint.
And
This
the key with that, right, Gordon, is like the fact that it would not interfere with friendly electronic communications. I mean, that's kind of the point there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're very you're not interfering, as you say, with friendly communications or other RF signals that you want to still have around, because you're doing this passively, and then when you are mitigating, it's in such a low power that you're not affecting them either. Um, Also, which is we characterize that as being um, low collateral damage, if you will. Collateral damage is often associated with kinetic effects, and this is non-kinetic. So we are operating on the drone in a very controlled manner, and as I said before, landing it in a pre-designated spot, which when you're defeating drones through kinetic means, and even sometimes jamming, you're not certain where it's going to land. Certainly, when you're shooting it out of the sky, you'll have debris and other things that you'll need to contend with, which in a lot of environments is not ideal at all. It's not
Well,
wanted.
certainly not like on the streets of New York City, let's put it that way. Like
Yeah.
this is really when you think about the homeland in particular, an ideal kind of technology when it comes to countering drones, for all the reasons you've just mentioned. And the
Mm.
fact that, as you also kind of alluded to, it integrates very well with other technologies. For example, like those, and I know you guys do work with our month sponsor, Echodyne. Radar is active, right? So you said yours is passive RF
Hmm.
monitoring.
Yeah.
Radar is active. At least that's what our guests earlier this month explained to us. And so that kind of synergy to have both active and passive in one system, as you integrate, and also like cameras. So I want to get that image back up that we had up a second ago in terms of integrations. I think we put it up a little early, and that was on me. But this reminds me, Gordon. I don't know if you were aware of there was a drone stalking case out, and no kidding, a guy was using a drone to stalk this single mom and her two little kids out in a rural farm in Virginia for months, harassing them to
Hmm.
the point where they were like prisons on their own land. They had to like put the shades down, and they got local law enforcement involved. Ultimately, counter UAS technology was deployed, and it was a holistic system that included, radar. It included tracking, and I think in this case they may have been using the DJI aeroscope at that time. I know they've disabled that since, but um, they were able to use that and then slew the camera to get pictures and whatnot. I mean, at the end of the day, with this kind of multi-layered, multifaceted approach, they were able to gather so much compelling evidence that the person pled guilty. First of all, they were able
Hmm.
to take all that, go to a judge, get a warrant, and
Right.
then crack open that drone, find the guy, and you know, ultimately he pled guilty. And
Yep.
actually, Abby Smith, the former number two in the U.S. Integration Office, wrote an article about this for Autonomy Global. I think it's still our number one article of all time. Because people are just really intrigued by this. When you think of counter drone, people think, I'm just getting rid of a drone that's pestering me, but this is or dangerous, right? This was really where law enforcement used it to make a criminal case. And I
Right.
think that is so significant for society and for our justice system to be able to have this kind of evidence as people, sadly, increasingly employ drones in crimes. Right? So, I mean, the complementary nature of what you guys do and what so many other people do and what you're also adding, I think is really key.
Hmm.
So tell me about this, in terms of how does integration across multiple layers, whether it's cyber, radar, optical, kinetic, how does that operate in a truly resilient counter UAS architecture?
Hmm. Well, as you build up these layers, they all start to complement each other. For
Yep.
instance, as I mentioned, when you've got an RF cyber layer laid in at the foundation, you have the full detect, track, identify, and mitigation capability. So, it's a great first solution when you're getting into the counter UAS business. Um, and then the next layer that we think is effective to build in is a radar. And what that will do is it will start to address some of the things that an RF cyber system will not see, which are the dark or low emitting drones, which you alluded to earlier.
Yep.
But in the same way, radar sometimes is often subject to false alarms. I know radar technology is getting better and better to be able to distinguish birds from drones and other things. But for instance, when an RF cyber system sees a target, it's at a no false alarm rate. So when radars have a still some false alarm rate, when you're bringing those two modes together, you're just improving your answer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when you're adding, the next layer might be a camera, which in RF cyber system detects the drone, the pilot location, and the home location of the drone to sufficient enough accuracy that you can point a camera to those locations and start getting eyes on the target, so to speak.
Yeah.
So all of this starts to build up and you're fusing these different technologies. And as I said, you're getting more and more information in a law enforcement environment. You're collecting things in a way that is evidentiary and able to be presented in a court of law. So they all build up on each other. And in the same way, you can start building up not just the sensing leg, but also the mitigation leg. You have RF cyber, the takeover that we have. Radar does not have a mitigation, so we can provide a mitigation there. But then you have other things like jammers. You have some more exquisite technologies now coming along for defeat, such as high-powered microwave and high-energy lasers, more in the military context. But you can see how you're just building one layer on top of the other to build to that 100% solution that everyone's looking for.
Yeah, brick by brick. The one you mentioned at the end there, I know they're called also directed energy weapons or DEW.
Yeah,
Zev Nadler writes for me also, and he wrote an article about how advanced air mobility, like the eVTOL aircraft folks, need to start thinking about maybe having uh, directed energy lasers on their aircraft up front to mitigate drones directly and not have to wait for anybody else to do that, right? Apparently, uh, think Israel Air actually has been doing this for years or has the capability on their commercial airliners. So when I first read it, I was like, "Are you really saying this, Zev?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." And then I thought more about it. I'm like, "Okay, all right, that might make sense." I don't know how comfortable our pilots would be. And I don't know. I mean, we're having a hard enough time getting our cops to have counter UAS authorities. Are we going to give it to an airline pilot, up in the sky? I don't know. But it is something to think about because look, they're the ones that are going to be flying like on low approaches where a drone could be that could be a deadly hazard. Right.
right.
So interesting times we find ourselves in. And I love what you guys are doing. So let's talk about some other real world scenarios since we're going there. I know that you have been involved in a really cool exercise called Combined Resolve 25-02. This was, I think, with the United States Army. I think it was a guard unit or guard members were involved as well, I think, as active duty. Tell us a little bit about this exercise and what the military was doing with counter drone technology there.
Yeah, well, counter UAS always has been a priority for the military. It's becoming increasingly more and more so that way for both their CONUS and OCONUS scenarios. So we were asked last month to come along to one of the units operating at the what's called the Joint Multinational Readiness Center in Germany, who were on a rotation to actually do some training with some of the allies and partners over there in NATO. And so um, they're trying to do realistic training using drones and counter drone technology. So we were able to take our Enforce Air unit, and it can be used in a number of different configurations, both at the infantry level, in a mounted configuration on vehicles, in a and a tactical configuration. So we were able to go there, train them up, and they took that into the exercise with them, and basically used it to really up their training and their effectiveness in counter drone operations. And
I think we have. Go ahead, Gordon.
yeah,
I'm
I was
sorry,
going
I
to
didn't mean.
say they published a number of things highlighting what we did. So I think we can show some of those, but you'll
Yeah,
see
that's what I was
those
gonna say. Let's
in
go there. And
social
I know
media.
these are all public use. These are all on Instagram and other social media channels posted by the Army. Can tell us what we're seeing on this one.
Well, this is just one of the soldiers. That's our Enforce Air 2 unit in a tripod configuration or tactical configuration, which is useful for a capability at forward operating bases, or even as units are moving around. That unit can be deployed in 10 or 15 minutes and taken down in the same amount of time. So but it provides a very robust counter UAS capability, this foundational layer that we talked about. And the units were training on it, as using it in their exercise.
I think we have one in a little bit of a different form here. What are we seeing in this picture?
Yeah, we also had a system we provide to them that goes in a backpack in a man-portable format. So for the infantry and the soldiers working out at the very front edge of the field of battle. This is a solution that they would take with them to really get as close to the action, if you will, to doing the sensing and mitigation of drones that as early as possible, since they're at the very front end of the fight.
How much does that, if you know, Gordon, how much does the backpack one weigh? I mean, I'm training right now to go to Glacier National Park and go backpack hiking, so I'm a little sensitive to this. If you're out in the field, like, how much am I carrying on my back?
Yeah, as is the military. They count every ounce that they
Exactly.
carry. But this backpack is about 40 pounds, so it's not the lightest, but it does give you the full capability that we described earlier,
Yeah.
which is very robust. So the Army's talking right now about how to use these different solutions, whether it's for the individual soldier or at the platoon and company level or brigade level. But our solution can float between all of those different echelons, if you will, and be used. A single unit can be packaged in any format to be utilized by any one of those uh, layers, if you will, or units.
Yeah, and I know that this exercise, a big component of it was testing out what the Army's calling their quote unquote transforming in contact or TIC initiative. And when you think about this is more, the analogy I'll give is kind of what we're seeing across the board, whether it's like at DIU, Defense Innovation Unit, whether it's at AFWorks or SpaceWorks. The idea is let's be able to rapidly take commercial technologies and get them into soldiers' hands in the field. And how do
Right.
we do that, right? And so it's not just testing like what you guys did there, demonstrating testing in real world conditions, as you said, but also then being able to show like, all right, now let's leverage other transaction authorities or commercial service offerings, things like this on the acquisition side to actually get them, into
Mhm.
people's hands. So I think
Right.
that's really cool. And I know you guys got a lot of press out of this. I think we've got an image of an article. All of those other images were from social media. Here we go. There's also articles about this in a lot of different places. I know I'm going to be writing a blog about this, so stay tuned for Autonomy Global to hear a little bit more. But this is really exciting that you guys got to go out. And Gordon, you were one of the people actually boots on the ground, right?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be out there with a few others from our team to really teach the soldiers, train them up, and then set them off to actually utilize the system. So it's very rewarding to work with the soldiers in the field and show them our technology and kind of watch the light bulbs go on as they appreciate what it can do for their missions.
Yeah, I know there were a lot of great quotes in some of those social media posts and articles. But just from your perspective, as you were kind of watching, right? You were helping them, you were training them, but you're also watching like how did it go? Can you give us kind of a little bit of an outbrief of how at the end of the day that went for you and for them?
Yeah, we're still. They just came back with the out of the box, as they call it. Because once they take this equipment into the field, they kind of lock themselves down as if it's a realistic operation. So
Yep.
we back out. We're not part of it, and we're still learning, waiting to learn some of the details. But if it goes the way previous exercises has gone, we're confident that they got some benefit out of the system, but we're waiting to hear some of the details. But I think they were excited to take it into the exercise. Many of them are seeing this technology for the first time, and it's cutting edge. So they're learning about it and being able to use it pretty quickly because the system is fairly easy to learn and utilize in the context of a military environment.
No, that's really exciting, and I'm glad you guys got to be a part of that, and looking forward to learning more as to kind of how that goes down. But speaking of more, as we look forward, we so many things are happening so quickly. Whether it's Operation Spiderweb, executive orders. Rumor is, Gordon, that maybe in the next 30 days or so, and even before any executive order directing this was dropped, that the beyond visual line of sight Part 108 rule is going to come down, and but for all indications, by all indications, it's going to be like 1,000 pages long. It's going to include things like UAS traffic management, and this idea of airspace awareness is so key to that. I always say counter UAS is the yin to the drone yang, if you will, for the industry. What are you guys looking at in terms of as you look ahead, not just in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, but over the next year? Any big announcements? Anything as you look forward? What we can expect from D-Fend Solutions?
Yeah, we're working on a number of things. I mean, we're going to keep tracking the rapidly evolving uh, counter drone world, and really leveraging our RF cyber as the foundational layer, as we talked about. That's what we do best. But then recognizing how this can be applied and the advantages of RF cyber to building up more complete counter drone and counter UAS solutions. So be looking for things we're doing there, either internally or externally, working with partners to be integrating up with some of their layers as we build up these systems together. And there'll be increasing integration that are just going to keep creating more and more effective systems to detect, track, identify, and defeat uh, many of the things that we talked about today.
Well, we'll surely be keeping an eye out. I know you very selectively attend industry events. I know you go to a number of counter UAS type events. Anything kind of top of mind, go to defense events clearly. Um, I saw your team at Soft Week. I was
Yeah.
smiling because it was so awesome to see. Brett Federson was there. Some of his other colleagues were there. You guys had a great booth and were part of our live stream from the floor. So that was really cool. And it was my first time there.
Mm.
So it was aw I mean, I used to work at CENTCOM in Tampa Stan, as we used to call it. And it was like a homecoming in a way for me. And it was so awesome to see Enforce Air and all the traction you were getting at your booth. when there were a lot of other technologies there, your booth was, no pun intended, getting swarmed. So that's pretty cool to see. What do you guys have coming up in terms of that? Anything else on the horizon? Any places where maybe people can kind of shake a hand and get to see the tech in person, meet some of your team out there?
Yeah, we'll be involved in all the premier events related to counter UAS, and really it's by these verticals I described before.
Yep.
There's events focused on the military, as you mentioned. There's events focused on public safety and law enforcement. There's events on critical infrastructure, sporting facilities. So there's a number of events that the community be familiar with that we'll be part of. So we look forward to seeing you and others at those events and talking further, answering questions, and also looking for opportunities to work together.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, of course, Brett was involved in my Law Tech Connect at Exponential just a couple weeks ago. Or gosh, time flies. A little bit longer than that. I feel like living in a vacuum here. But it was so great to see him, and hopefully I'll run into him and some of your team at some of these events over the next couple months. But as we kind of get close to the end of our time together here, Gordon, besides some of these industry events, how else can people learn more about D-Fend solutions or plug into your efforts?
Yeah, well, we have our team does a great job on our website, and I always steer people there. There's a lot of information there as you're learning about the drone UAS, counter drone, counter UAS world, and all the verticals we talked about here. How does it apply to different environments? Um, there's lots of information there to get educated, and then there's always opportunities to reach out to us individually, to myself and my team, to learn more and to engage in person. So that's the recommendation I have for folks as they're exploring this whole world.
Well, and I'm just going to give a huge shout out to your drone incident tracker. It's probably one of the most comprehensive and user friendly things I've ever seen in terms of what is happening out there. So if anybody's curious, or and you can filter, whether it's like critical infrastructure or defense, military, and it's global. So if anybody's like, there really isn't a drone problem. Go to D-Fend's website and check out their incident tracker, and you'll see kind of what's happening globally. It's pretty up to date as well. So I think kudos for that. I think that's a great educational tool that you provide to everybody, including members of the public that may not have a great awareness of this, and
Yeah,
need to, quite frankly. So thank you for doing that. And of course, you're on
sure.
LinkedIn, right, Gordon? There's a way people can
Yeah,
like,
you can find us on as a company or individually on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there, so you can be keeping up on us that way as well.
all right, very good. And any closing comments as we get ready to dial off here?
Well, we touched on a lot of things, Don, in this discussion. Thanks again for hosting us and for the discussion. But again, we're just glad to be part of such an important mission that is becoming more and more apparent in our daily lives, both here in the U.S. as well as overseas, based on what we're seeing. And we think we're making valuable contributions to that community and the mission. And we look forward to continuing to do that, both as a company, but also in partner with others as we put together these multi-layered systems that, we think the RF cyber is, like, as I said, the foundational layer, but something that can be built on to put together, um, solution for any kind of environment.
Yeah, and what I love about what you just said, Gordon, is you're not the only one saying it. Like anybody in the counter UAS industry that is, knows what they're talking about is saying the exact same thing. This is a better together type solution. This is no one silver bullet, I think were your words. And so it's going to be really great to, I think, see some of this develop even more robustly over time, and hopefully get those authorities that we all need to use it ubiquitously in a way that will really protect the people that need and places that need protecting. So thank you so much for everything, Gordon. It's always a wonderful to work with D-Fend Solutions. Thank you, everybody out there. We are out here.